Good morning, guys. Again, I'm really sorry for another makeup free face video. I do school runs in the morning and on an afternoon, so I really don't have time to do my hair and makeup on the morning. I'm more bothered about getting my little boy ready and smartened up for school. So that's my main priority on the morning rather than dealing with myself. You know, as a parent, you put yourself aside some mornings because you're more focused on getting your child all ready for schools and things. Yeah, I did this video today because about having bonds with deities, because it appears that people saying that they have gathered bonds with deities that are not really associated with the area, which, for example, I wouldn't feel quite connected as such to Athena Minerva due to her being a city goddess. So where I live, with my area being like a seaside town destination, she wouldn't be connected to the area with it not being a city. So with Athena Minerva, I travel out to see her, to York, where I see all the city deities that I worship, that I go over to visit, you know, their statues. But it's just that realistically you cannot really gather a close bond with a deity that is really not associated with the area. And, you know, me personally, you know, I see honour and worship as the same thing. Others may see it as someone who doesn't worship or work with deities. But it all depends on who you are and what your age is, and, you know, and things like that. But I personally see honour and worship as the same thing. So, I mean, the deities in my area are all the Greek and Roman sea deities. Like, you've got Aphrodite, Venus, Poseidon, Neptune, Amphitrite, Salcia. I never know whether I'm saying her Roman name right. I just find it so difficult to pronounce, so I do apologise if I'm not saying her name right. And then you've got Thetis, then you have Galatea, Fontus, Oceanus, and other Greek sea deities like the Nereids. And then we have Pizone Park, which is a full-blown nature park, which I personally see it as like the temple of Dionysus Bacchus, and like the nature nymphs. And obviously you've got the waterfalls there, like a big fountain, and you've got the lake around, so that's like the river nymphs. So it's just that realistically you can't bond with the deity as such. It's not really associated with your area, but there will be some things in your area that you would be able to thank them for. Like with Poseidon, Neptune is also to do with horses. So if you, for example, like if you dream of Poseidon, like with a horse, what that means is that I was actually going to walk through Pizone Park this morning, but there's two workmen down there. So what it means is that when you dream of Poseidon, like with horses, what it generally means is that you can thank him for horses in your area. because obviously you wouldn't feel quite a connection with him as such, with him not having anything to do with your area. Actually, I'm going to walk up this way. I'm just choosing where to walk. And so you wouldn't really gather a connection with Poseidon and Neptune the way that I would do with living in the area that's associated with him being a sea deity. And also you have King Triton as well. So it's like, well, you know, when people say to me, oh, they have a really close bond with someone, and then they say, with a deity, and they say, oh, but they're nothing to do with the area. It's like, well, realistically it doesn't make sense, because you cannot form a bond with a deity that's not connected to your area. So you wouldn't worship them as much, but there would be something in your area that would be connected to them that you could thank them for. Like, because in my area where we live, we have 2 forests. We've got Dalby Forest, Raincliffe Forest, which Diana Artemis will have a connection with that. So she'll be associating with the forests in where I live. Then you've got a big nature park called Pizon Park, and then you have the seafront right down at the bottom from Pizon Park. So I have many things in this area that deities would gather a connection with, because due to what this area is, because it's not a city, it's a seaside town. But I personally don't worship Athena Minerva as such, because she's not associated with the area. So I would travel out to go see her, to go see deities that are associated with cities, like Athena Minerva. But there is things in my area that I could thank her for, like owls, but she's nothing to do with the area. With this, see, I've gathered like a close connection, and I personally worship sea deities more, and also nature deities like nature nymphs, Dionysus, Bacchus, who all resemble nature. So I personally see Pizon Park as a big massive temple to Dionysus, Bacchus and the nature nymphs. But I wouldn't say, for example, gather a close bond with a deity that's not, you know, say for example, like Athena Minerva. I wouldn't go around worshipping Athena Minerva as much. Like if I lived in a city, it would be different, because obviously, you know, I would have that bond with her, with Athena Minerva. But for her, because she's not not connected to where I live, it's quite, you know, it's impossible to even get that bonding. You know, it's just occurred to me, you know, when people say, you know, I have a really close connection with a certain goddess or god, and you know, but they're nothing to do with the area. See, I strictly see Aphrodite Venus as a sea goddess, so I relate to her myth more, of her being born, you know, in Cyprus Sea and everything. So I personally relate to that, and that because of the area that I live in. See, if I didn't live in an area where there was sea involved, I would associate with another myth of hers, where I would see her connected to that area. But again, you know, it all goes on the area where you are, to, you know, to worship deities a lot more, where you have more to worship for them for. And obviously of getting that bonding, you know, but it all goes on the area, because you can't really worship a deity a lot more than another deity who's actually associated with your area. So it actually goes on the area that you live, where you would worship them more. Like Apollo, for example, his Greek name is Apollon, but when he got taken via the Romans, he's the same god, but they give him a Roman name called Apollo. He's nothing to do with my area because he isn't a sea deity. But I see him as a nature god. So wherever nature and the sun is shining is there. Because obviously nature is all around, regardless of where you live. And obviously the sun can be around in certain parts of the world, but it is everywhere, the moon everywhere, you know, regardless where you live. We all see the same thing. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, yeah, it's just realistically, you can't really gather close connections with gods that you generally, they're not really associated with your area, because it all goes on the area and who you would generally worship more, and you know, but yeah, it's just, it isn't really, it's not really, you can't really form bonds and stuff with gods and gather, you know, close connection. You can't really worship a goddess who's not associated with, or a god that's associated with your area, you know, a lot more than a god and goddess who is associated with your area. Because you know that people tend to go for and feel like a natural pull to deities that are associated with the area. And you can worship gods and goddesses that are not. You know, there's nothing there which says that you can't, because you can, but they just wouldn't get worshipped a lot. They would get worshipped a lot less. But you'd be able to still, you would still be able to thank them for stuff that is in your area that deity would associate to. You could still associate, you know, Poseidon, Neptune with like rivers, water, anything to do with water and horses. But you know, so there would be something you'd be able to go on in your area for, but you wouldn't really worship them as much, and that would all be going on your area. So I just thought to just to do this video just to help people out, and so they understand the difference with deities and areas, and who they would feel more connected to and who they wouldn't feel more connected to. So I will catch you later, guys. Bye for now.